So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining the webinar this afternoon. My name is Kent McKenzie, and I'm going to be leading us through the next hour. And I have a panel of esteemed professionals and experts in this afternoon's subject. So I'll quickly come on and introduce us all. Firstly, before I get in, just a huge thank you to Innovate Finance for putting this on. We have quite a lot to cover over the next hour, so we're going to move quite quickly through and introduce today's topic. So today we're going to be talking about the development of fintech ecosystems around the UK, and we're also going to touch, I guess, more broadly on the FinTech National Network. In terms of what we're going to cover today, let me just share with you the agenda. So first of all, we'll crack through a couple of really quick introductions and let you know who is on the panel today. Then we're going to talk just I guess an entry level, quite a high level, around some of the hallmarks of creating a successful fintech ecosystem, and these are based on the experience of all of the people around the call today and on the panel today, and also some reflections and perspectives on the creation of ecosystems in different parts of the world. Then I'll hand over to Charlotte Crosswell, who you will all know as the CEO of Innovate Finance, to talk broadly about the FinTech National Network and talk about the value that network is bringing and creating. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time here just walking through and taking a bit of a trip around the Great British Isles and walking through the fintech ecosystems and networks that have been created by the leaders that you'll hear from today. We will leave a good chunk of time at the end, happy to take questions as we go in the little question box, and Chris and I will orchestrate those, and at the end we will dish those questions out and make sure we answer, if possible, all of them, but certainly as many as possible. So let me just do a few quick introductions. So myself, Ken McKenzie, so I'm a partner in Deloitte. I lead all the work that we do around the fintech landscape, so from working with fintechs and incumbent organizations to helping communities, countries, different regions build ecosystems. We've been doing that now for the last, 5-6 years. Chris Brown, as part of that team, has been involved in pretty much all the major ecosystem builds that we've done, both in the UK and beyond. But we're not here to talk about Deloitte, we're here to talk about the ecosystem build. Our job today is to chaperone and guide you through. So just quickly, if I run through who you'll hear from today. So Charlotte Crosswell needs little introduction, CEO of Innovate Finance. Michael Paris, so Michael is a lead in FinTech Scotland, so we'll talk about the Scotland story. And then we have Alex Lee and Karen Bradbury from FinTech Northern Ireland and Invest Northern Ireland to talk through the story in that part of the world. We have the illustrious Julian Wells, who will talk through FinTech North and the fantastic work that's been going on across FinTech North. Gavin Powell, who will talk about the wonderful story in FinTech Wales. And last but by no means least, we'll hear from Stuart Harrison, who's done a fantastic job in pioneering around FinTech West. So I'll hand over to these folks as we go. So before we get into this, let me just flick on, sorry, a slight delay between my slides. I wanted just to share, so Chris and I just wanted to share just a couple of things that have been important as we've been involved in building ecosystems in different parts of the world. So there are three, I guess, themes that always surface when you build an ecosystem, wherever you go in the world, quite frankly. Let me just flick this slide on. So three really important themes that always come through and worth remembering and bearing in mind, and they're on the top line of this slide. These things are so critically important to remember, and the team here will touch on them, I'm sure, as we go. That building that vision and that story around what you want your ecosystem to be is so critical. The ability to narrate and tell stories in this space and really guide that vision is the hallmark of every successful ecosystem we've seen created around the world. And importantly, an inclusive story. It all falls apart if you don't recognize, respect, and listen to every part of the ecosystem and what needs to be achieved. So critical that story is right. Second component that really comes through is that ability to recognize your USPs. So in your own ecosystem, what is it that will really stand you out? What is it that people will point at your ecosystem and go, yeah, I know These guys are famous for this. So think about the USP and the thing that stands you out when you create an ecosystem. And then the third thing, perhaps stating the obvious, but the creation and nurturing and growth of an ecosystem is not a one and done thing. You don't wake up, spin up a project, and you're done 3 months later. It requires tenacity, focus, passion, commitment to continually grow it and nurture and build it. And that's a theme that whoever you listen to on this call today will have been through that journey. So those are, I guess, some of the themes. Chris, I'm going to ask you maybe just to talk about some of the building blocks, and actually when you go to build an ecosystem, what are the things you've got to remember and think about? So Chris, do you want to just canter through a few of these building blocks?
Sure, thanks, Ken. To build on these 3 points, there are also a number of key building blocks, as Kent mentioned, that leading global fintech ecosystems will typically utilize to help build these communities. And the most successful communities around the world typically have coverage across all of these and many more building blocks. First on this list is funding and SME support, and fintech communities and SMEs are often the first group people think of when they think of fintech ecosystems, and they provide a new wave of innovation and ideas to help support the growth of ecosystems. And ensuring that group has the correct support and capabilities to grow is fundamentally important. Ensuring that funding is complete throughout its full life cycle, and allowing fintechs and other SMEs the opportunity to focus their attention on developing new concepts and ideas rather than the core infrastructure needed to survive and to build. Talent and skills are the lifeblood of any ecosystem, and ensuring that a solid pipeline of applicable talent is available, whilst also providing the capabilities to support the retraining of the existing workforce and to support on that side. Working in such a highly regulated sector as financial services means that having a close and effective relationship with the regulator is incredibly important. Creating environments such as sandboxes or creating new regimes that allow the application process for licenses to be streamlined and effective. Luckily for everyone speaking on the network today, we all have the benefit of working with the FCA, who are one of, if not the leading regulators globally for fintech, which is a huge benefit to the growth of any ecosystem. Collaboration is absolutely fundamental to an ecosystem. As Kent highlighted, any collaboration needs to be inclusive and of the benefit to all parties involved. This collaboration can be within the ecosystem, but also internationally. And I think it's a fundamental area that we'll hear from each of the different communities that are part of the network today. Finally, you've got eminence, which is of course crucial to raise awareness, but also to share success stories and highlight benefits. While finally, probably the least exciting of these examples on screen right now, governance and having a capability to measure the success of your ecosystem is often a building block that is super important to ensure that a community is able to grow and build over time. Thank you. As we hear from the network today, I think we should just listen out for some of these building blocks. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Chris. Spot on. And yeah, these elements I'm sure will come through loud and clear as we get around the group. Okay, we're going to crack on, and I'm going to pass over to Charlotte to talk just very quickly about the national network, and then we'll take a quick canter across the British Isles. Charlotte, thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Ken. And the great thing is, on National Network, we used to sort of, when we started it and announced it April last year, we sort of bemoaned the fact it was so difficult to get investment, if you were outside of London, some of the challenges of connecting up the UK. And isn't it amazing, really, to think after just 5 short months, or what feels like 5 long months, you could be at the end of my street, for all I know, and it won't really make much difference. And I think that just shows you that we've been hiding behind geographical splits for some time, but actually maybe COVID will close that gap, and you're only ever a Zoom call away. I did like your comment on sort of marathon versus a sprint. I feel that we've been on a bit of a 5-month marathon maybe, so maybe we'll just continue to sit there and get to the finish line quite soon. I think for most of the people on the call, you'll know what Innovate Finance is, the FinTech industry body. What that actually means is, to a certain extent, we are the convening voice. Everyone across the UK who's involved in FinTech, and that is a significant amount of firms. Probably every financial services firm would like to say they're FinTech now. It shows the importance of innovation in financial services. And yes, we sit in London, but we very much felt with the national network that we couldn't talk for Scotland or Wales or the North or the West or Northern Ireland. It was really important that everyone had an equal partnership in this. It's incredibly important at the moment that we look across the UK, especially with things like the levelling up agenda, but more, the change that faces consumers and businesses wherever you are in the UK, and what FinTech can do to support that. And that's what the national network's there for. It's to bring those voices together to ensure we're listening to the end customer, whoever that is, wherever they are, and promote those opportunities to be engaged, whether that's investment, whether it's looking at FinTech solutions for local FinTech problems, but also how do we match up investors, overseas markets with all the great innovation going around the FinTech clusters, and whether there's London-based companies who decide to choose other places around the UK to grow their businesses, or whether there's companies headquartered outside of London South East who obviously recognise the need maybe to come down to London to see investors, but don't have the need to have all their offices here. And I think we're going to see some significant changes there. COVID-19 for me has just it's been a bit of a whirlwind, I think, like most people, and it has really accelerated digital transformation. And really, as we look at the future success and sustainability of the sector, national connectivity and the levelling up agenda is going to be at the forefront of that. As most people are aware, this week we launched the FinTech Strategic Review. We are supporting that independent review that's being led by Ron Khalifa. And one of the work streams is national connectivity and levelling up, which is going to be run by Gerard Grech, but it's going to have all the national network partners on that, feeding into that from around the UK. And that's going to be an incredibly important piece of work as we look for the rest of the year on what FinTech is, how does it grow, how does it attract investment, how does it get the skills and talent to support it, but really, how it's changing financial services innovation. And that's where I've been incredibly encouraged by every conversation with every financial services incumbent across the sectors, of looking at their desire to accelerate digital transformation and the role of their own innovation, but really partnering with fintechs to show them how to do that. It is really important that as we go out overseas, and a lot of us are involved in that, obviously, that we show the breadth and depth of our solutions across the UK. And I'm always very encouraged by the fact that a lot of times now we see trade missions coming to other parts of the UK without even coming via London anymore. That was quite a different story to a few years ago, and just shows the strength of the ecosystems, the companies there, the innovation that's happening, the universities, the skills, the talent, and local governments supporting this really important sector and showing what it can do. I think it's incredibly important that we highlight that those international hubs are looking to the UK now for thought leadership. They're looking for the innovation, the solutions we've already had, and how they can potentially export those to those markets. And just some of the different solutions we've found through this crisis. So I'm incredibly bullish on how the sector will fare. It's like every small company across the UK, it's had its challenges over the last few months, but it is really poised to now go into mainstream, to look at our experiences we've had, share those across all of our different relevant networks, and really drive this sector forward collectively. I look forward to hearing from my esteemed peers today. Thanks, Ken.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Charlotte. That was fantastic. Okay, we're going to go on a road trip, and we are going to start in Scotland. And I'm going to hand over to Michael Paris to talk us through the Scotland story. Please do, if there are questions, please do add them into the chat box, and Chris and I will keep an eye on them. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Kent. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Paris. I'm the marketing director at FinTech Scotland. As you can tell by my accent, I'm not from Scotland, but being an international company. I'm French, and our CEO is English. So today I'm going to focus on one aspect of the building blocks that Chris mentioned earlier, which is the global collaboration piece. So Chris, if you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in 2 years, we developed the FinTech cluster in Scotland with hundreds of participants. And you can see some of those participants around that wheel and the categories specifically. We've always been very mindful that in order to create a successful cluster, we need to be outward looking and not focus purely on Scotland. So even though we're called FinTech Scotland, we are just a bit more than Scotland. And I think that's what I want to show you through this presentation. So if you move to the next slide, you'll see the fintechs themselves. So on the left-hand side, you've got the Scottish fintech or fintech in Scotland, because some of them have started somewhere else and have moved to Scotland in huge numbers in the past 2 years. We have been very happy to welcome some companies from all around the world, including Hong Kong, the States, Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, and the Nordics more recently. One good example being Edenbull from Norway, who joined us last year because they heard from us through social media and decided to contact us through our website. Very happy about the noise they were hearing about Scotland and all the activities taking place. Therefore, for us, I think one of the learning in terms of the building of the cluster was really about marketing and the noise you make about a cluster, because you can do all the right things, and if no one knows about it, then it's very inefficient, especially when you're situated geographically so close to a big cluster like London, where there's a lot of noise around what's happening there. So in a way, being smaller gives you an extra challenge, but also gives you opportunities, because it's easier to gather all the members of the ecosystem and the cluster behind yourselves and shout with just the one voice. So moving to the next slide. We at FinTech Scotland, we're not a membership organization. We decided to create a community and no one pays to be part of the community. And that's been made possible by all the partners that you can see on the slide, Deloitte being one of them. Those people have decided that the project was interesting enough that they wanted to be involved, contribute financially to pay for FinTech Scotland to operate, but more so being involved at the strategic level to ensure that all of them will deliver with us the strategy. Deloitte, for example, are helping us on the global connection side of things, connecting us with hubs around the world, in the Middle East, in Canada more recently, and helping us develop our international strategy, and it's been going quite well. All the other partners we've chosen because although they've got presence in Scotland, they have huge activities happening elsewhere in the world. And that's why they're part of the family. They can help with fintechs lending in other parts of the world, offering them services, office space, and other type of benefits, which the fintechs are very thankful for. To be, a cluster, you need to be recognized globally to be known for something. So if you can move to the next slide. We have been very keen on being very open, and we wanted to be part of the FinTech National Network straight from the start, because we think it's important that as a UK, we speak with the one voice and collaborate on very important opportunities, collaboration opportunities. So we've done that, so that's the UK level. We also wanted to be connected at the European level, hence our participation in the European Discovery Programme to share collaboration opportunities from all around Europe. And we took that and replicated that with Spain to be connected to South America and setting up something called Insomnia, which has been fantastic. We've been very happy to be part of Insomnia, a great group of people meeting on a yearly basis to discuss international fintech matters. And finally, we do have some one-on-one ad hoc kind of partnerships going on with countries such as Japan, New Zealand, Bahrain, and many more. Moving on to the next slide. So, like I said, we need to be recognized for something. Being open is one thing. What we wanted also to be known for is open finance. hence our bid a couple of years ago to receive funding from UKRI for 22.5 million to set up this global open finance center of excellence. Happy to say that the bid was successful, and we got that money to set up the center with the University of Edinburgh and FData. It's very important to us because it's not a FinTech Scotland initiative. It's a conglomerate initiative, and also it's not because it's based in Scotland that every hub around the world will have access to this center to really make sure that open banking is taken seriously. We look at global standards and we progress the agenda. So that's one of the things we want to be known for. That's Brand Scotland. Moving to the next slide. We want to invite people to Scotland. So for the past few years, we've run a Scotland festival, FinTech Festival, inviting people from all around the world. So here are some stats from last year. We're doing one this year, which is going to be a bit different, all digital, and we'll make sure to invite all the hubs from all around the world. Last year we had visitations from, the States, from Hong Kong. We had people from New Zealand coming from Cyprus and then spending a few days in Scotland for the festival, which was fantastic. So if you want to attend this year's festival, it's going to be between the 7th of September to the 4th of October. All the events are digital, so you can just go on our website and register to some of the events. And finally, the last slide, I think being recognized is important, and to know that you're doing the right thing. There is this European Secretariat for Cluster Analysis, which delivers accreditations, and I'm happy to say that in Europe, with the third FinTech hub to receive bronze accreditation, moving very quickly, hopefully to gold. And it's important for us because more than a badge, they give you a report on your hub or on your cluster, and they tell you how you can be better and move towards a better state, because they've proven that a good cluster, a good ecosystem provides more jobs and more economic growth for the country it's in. So that's what we're going to be focusing for the next 3 years, making sure that our cluster grows and develop appropriately. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you, Mikhail. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move swiftly over the water to Northern Ireland. I'm going to hand over to Alex and Karen.
Thank you, Ken, and welcome everybody to Northern Ireland. It's a beautiful sunny day here, as you can probably see from the window behind me. It's not always like that here, I have to say. So my name is Alex Lee. I'm one of the directors and co-founders at FinTech Northern Ireland. I'm delighted to be joined by Karen Bradbury, who's not only the sector lead for financial services from Invest Northern Ireland, but also sits on the board of FinTech Northern Ireland as well. Can I have the next slide, please, Chris? What I'll do, we've just heard the essential building blocks for any FinTech ecosystem starts with a good mission and purpose. So I'll start there with ours. And quite simply, our goals are twofold. Firstly, to position Northern Ireland as an attractive destination for FinTech. And that's based on some of the unique skills and clusters of expertise that we've got here. And I'm going to let Karen talk through those shortly. And the second goal really is about collaboration. And we're seeking to collaborate with the other FinTech ecosystems, both nationally through the FinTech National Network and also internationally. And the goal of doing that is to really benefit our FinTech firm members in any way that we can, really. Next slide, please, Chris. So just to talk about our member firms, we are an industry association. So like many of the other regional associations you'll hear from today, we're a not-for-profit organisation that relies on the sponsorship funding of our members to fund our activities. And our members really come from all corners of the ecosystem. And again, we've just heard from Deloitte how important it is to have all of those building blocks of the ecosystem involved. So we've obviously got the FinTech startup and scale-up firms as part of our community. Admittedly, we probably don't have as many pure play FinTech firms here in Northern Ireland as perhaps some of the other regions, but they're definitely very actively involved with us. We have a lot of technology providers here in Northern Ireland who are targeting the financial services sector, often alongside other industry verticals, but they found a particularly strong use case for the technology and financial services, and they're well represented within our industry association. We have representation, of course, from our incumbent financial services sector and those in particular that are embracing digital technology. And we've also got representation from the education and skills providers, so the local universities, the accelerators and incubators. And finally, our membership comes from some of the FinTech funders locally who are funding FinTech firms, so the VC companies and the like. So as an industry association, you can see we're quite a broad church, and we hope to cover all of those building blocks for an essential FinTech ecosystem. What I'll do now is hand over to Karen, and Karen is going to talk us to some of the specific FinTech clusters of expertise that we have, and also introduce more broadly our FinTech ecosystem. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Could you have the next slide, please, Chris? I guess talking more broadly about the FinTech sector in Northern Ireland has really grown up over the last 25 years, started off with initial investments with companies such as Allstate and Liberty Mutual, where we start of the FDI financial services sector in Northern Ireland, and particularly in FinTech. And around the same time, the local Indigenous company First Derivatives set up and started up providing software solutions for the capital markets. And since then, financial services, international financial services, and more specifically FinTech, has really grown. We now have sort of 4 areas where we have particular expertise, I guess, and depth of expertise, as you can see on the slide there: trading tech, reg tech and compliance, AI, and cybersecurity. We have a strong global recognition for FinTech. We have the FDI markets. We've been the #1 for FinTech investment and also US cyber investment in terms of number of projects, and also most recently we've been ranked as the 3rd location, ranked 3rd in FinTech location of the future. So it's an area in terms of the wider sort of economy in Northern Ireland being a particular area of success. And I guess back to Chris's point of recognising where you're good, these would be the 4 areas particularly within FinTech where we feel that we have some expertise and where we've really developed some clusters of excellence. The trading tech one has really grown up around the FDI companies that are based in Northern Ireland, companies such as Citi, CME Group, TPI Cap, where they have set up their platform and software development centres here. And so there's a real depth of expertise in terms of trading tech. If we look at reg tech and compliance, that tends to be some of our more locally owned companies who have really developed really innovative solutions in terms of reg tech and risk and compliance, and doing that mostly for the investment banking and also asset management and payment industries. With the AI and the data analytics and the cyber, there we find more of a mix between locally owned and foreign owned companies, and really building up around the work that was done initially from some of the companies such as Arity and which is a spin out of Allstate, and cyber. And I guess what would underpin all of these, and particularly when we look at cyber, is collaboration. And collaboration both company to company, and some of the things that we are finding with FinTech NI is the real desire of companies to work together to look to how they can develop the system or develop the ecosystem collectively. Also government support, as Invest NI as the government agency or economic development agency for Northern Ireland, we're looking as to how we can fund these companies and support them in their growth, and also support the collaboration, and also then fundamentally the collaboration with the universities, both in terms of making sure that they have the appropriate courses to meet industry need, and then also in the research capability. If you look at the Centre for Secure Information Technology, which is the UK's Innovation and Research Centre for Cyber, and this is as part of Queen's University, and that has been instrumental in really developing the cyber cluster and that area of expertise. So in my experience, what's really helped develop all of this and what's underpinned the growth of the ecosystem here has been collaboration and a real desire to work together for the greater good and for the greater development of the sector. Could have the next slide, please, Chris? So this is just a snapshot of everybody who is here. What I would say is that we have our startups and scale-ups, as Alex mentioned. They're at various stages. We have some that are in terms of the startup and scale up or startup phase, such as Loyal Bee and YetUp and Esther, and then some of the more established companies such as FSCom and Funds Access and Detactics and Automated Intelligence. In terms of the established financial services sector, if you look up to the top right there, what I would say there is, particularly in the FDI, where we've had a lot of success. Again, it's back to that a large part of what companies are doing here is been built on fintech. So they tend to come to do technology initially and then build out their wider services. So what we're finding is that that's providing a potential, like a talent pipeline for the startups and scale-ups to be able to access in terms of their niche expertise and really develop on that. And that there's just the wider, that there's a real depth of talent in terms of fintech in Northern Ireland. When we look at, you can see there in terms of the skills and the digital hubs and things, there's the wider areas, but some of those, as I mentioned, Queen's, both universities are developing courses that are specific to the fintech needs and financial services needs of the sector here, and also then the Northwest colleges or the colleges as well. And with that, I'm going to pass on to Alex, please.
Thanks, Karen. Can I have the next slide, please, Chris? So just to wrap things up, we are one of the, I suppose, youngest of the regional fintech associations in the FinTech National Network. We're probably the baby of the network, if you like, in that we've been going for less than 2 years, but we feel we've achieved quite a lot over the last 18 months. And maybe to talk more to what we've got planned and a couple of highlights we're looking forward to. One of our local universities, Ulster University Business School, is about to launch one of the first FinTech degree programs anywhere in the UK in September, and we've had quite a bit of input in terms of designing that syllabus. And a second highlight to call out is we are planning in September to conduct some detailed research of our FinTech ecosystem here with our good friends at Whitecap Consulting. And I think, as you're about to hear from some of the other FinTech ecosystems in England, that they've been central to providing research and benchmarks and information on the FinTech ecosystem. And we very much look forward to replicating that here in Northern Ireland in September. Thanks very much, Kent.
Thanks, Alex. Fantastic story. Thanks, Alex, and thank you, Karen. It's brilliant. Okay, Julian, we're going to hurtle down the M6 and head to the north. So, Julian, do you want to talk us through FinTech North, please?
Yep, thank you very much, Ken. Hello, everyone. I'm Julian Wales, representing FinTech North today. I'm also part of Whitecap Consulting that Alex was just mentioning. If I can have the next slide, please, Chris. So, FinTech North is it's a multi-location ecosystem. We represent the Northern Powerhouse, the 4 main regions there being the Northeast, Leeds and Yorkshire, Greater Manchester and Liverpool. Similar to other people who've spoken so far, we're a not-for-profit. We're also not a membership organisation, so it's a very open and collaborative entity. And as the sort of front page on the website says, the sort of purpose is bringing together the FinTech community in the Northern Powerhouse. And that means different things to different people. Next slide, please, Chris. A little bit of the background. FinTech North's been around since 2016. This was the first of the regionally based FinTech ecosystems. It was co-created by Whitecap and a FinTech company called White Label Crowdfunding. As I mentioned, it's a not-for-profit, but it's really been events-led over the time that FinTech North has existed. Events have been seminars and conferences, and they've been held right across the North in different locations. And the underlying belief with FinTech North is that if we put on interesting events with good speakers at different locations, then people will come, and that's what we've been doing since 2016. Through COVID, we've flipped into webinars, as most people have. Another thing to point out is that FinTech North is chaired by Chris Sear. Chris is a Treasury FinTech envoy, known to a lot of people on the call, I'm sure. But Chris is a long-standing advocate of sort of the benefits of regional fintech and looking outside London, not just in the north, but right across the UK. So it's great having him involved. The next slide, please, Chris. This graphic here sort of summarizes the kind of things that we've been involved in. So since 2016, we've hosted nearly 60 events now. Last year was the busiest year so far. We had 24 events in 12 months, so an average of 2 per month. FinTech North has kind of grown to a point now where, despite having no central funding and no members, that it can sustain an employee. And so we have an engagement manager. His name's Joe Roche, and his full-time role is sort of to run the community from a marketing, business development, events and relationship management perspective. We've drawn a lot of people from a lot of different places across the UK. Lots of high-profile companies have spoken at the events. We've had lots of international speakers, so 22 different countries so far. We've been represented from in speaker lineups, and we've worked with DIT on 5 trade missions now. And Charlotte mentioned these earlier. We've had inbound trade missions from right across Europe, and they've come to the north, and we've put together a program where they've spent time in in different cities across the north and been exposed to the sort of the ecosystem and potential partners who they might want to come to the UK to work with. Next slide, please, Chris. And just a photo from one of our events. This was the biggest event we've had so far. This was our Leeds conference last year. Had about 350 people there on the day for a full day conference. And the momentum was building nicely for this year's conference, but obviously plans have changed a little bit. Next slide, please. For each of for 3 of the 4 main regions in the north, a fintech ecosystem analysis has been conducted, and this is the one for Manchester. And basically, these analyses involve sort of gathering stats in a consistent manner around each of the regions, and then mapping the ecosystem of the organisations that are present. And I don't have enough time to go through that in any detail, but each of these northern regions has startups, scale-ups, established FS, tech companies, a really engaged higher education community. The universities outside London we find are really interested in fintech everywhere we go, and especially the north. And one of the things to point out is that the fintechs that are in the regions tend to like being the fact they can get more profile than they feel they could if they were in London. So I wouldn't say a sort of big fish in a small pond, but a more prominent fish in the pond. So that's Greater Manchester. Next slide, please, Chris. There's the same for Leeds. And next slide, please, Chris. It's the same for the Northeast. If you want to look at any of these, just Google Greater Manchester FinTech Analysis or Leeds FinTech Analysis, Northeast FinTech Analysis. It'll all kind of come up straight away. And then the last slide, please, Chris. In terms of what we're doing at the moment, currently conducting a community survey to help plan for the future, asking the people across the north what they would like from FinTech North moving forward. We're looking at how we fund future activity. It's been quite difficult in COVID. Sponsorship's been hard to come by. We've sort of felt the pain of not having a central funding, and we're always looking to collaborate with other regions. We've had FinTech Scotland come and speak at our events, and we'll certainly like to do the same with the other regions as well. Worked really well with Innovate Finance and been very grateful for all the support Innovate Finance have given us and the FinTech National Network. Right, that's 6 minutes on the dot. I'm done. I'm done.
Good man, Julian. Good man. Thank you so much. What wonderful story and wonderful ecosystem there. So yeah, huge kudos. Okay, we're going to go to Wales. Gavin, can I hand over to you to tell us the Wales story, please?
You can indeed, Kent. So hello to everybody and welcome to Wales, and continuing this journey around the UK and stopping off in what is a very rainy place today, but that's just life in Wales. So FinTech Wales is also quite young in its journey. So we incorporated as a business just over 12 months ago now. So we're quite early in our setting up stage, if you like. Similar to the others, we're a not-for-profit, and we have a sort of panel and a board to sort of guide us. And we also have a FinTech envoy through Richard Theo, similar to the other regions. So I'll talk to you a little bit today about one of the aspects that we've been focusing on here in Wales, and sort of what we've done to date and some of our sort of outputs and that. So next slide, please. Oops, there we are. So you've heard the E word quite often so far in this webinar, this about ecosystems. So something that we've really been focused on is about building that ecosystem, what a good one actually looks like. So not just looking at the fact that there's these constituent parts or these blocks that are needed to actually make this work, but it's how they work together, how they interact, their dependencies, and it's making that interaction work that we believe gives it the real power that can happen for an ecosystem. So taking one approach to look at that, we sort of define that there's 3 different states that you can have these ecosystems in. So very much in the basic state, if you have all of those sort of constituent parts, but they're not really playing together, there's very little collaboration, there's very little planning, then that sort of ecosystem doesn't work particularly well, and you'll probably see that regional area fall behind other regions in terms of sort of GVA and growth. The next step up is around performing, so that means that you're doing quite well, there's a bit of sort of interplay, and then you're a bit more keeping up with the other regions that exist, not just in the UK, but globally as well. But the one that we're really aiming for is the sort of exciting one. So that's the exemplar, where everything is very efficient, very effective, quite well planned out, and you have a long-term vision that everybody is aligned with, and a single sort of voice and message, everybody it plays along. So all of those partners and all of those players within that ecosystem all have their own responsibilities and roles to play, and they're all sort of living up quite well to that. So that's what we're really trying to get to, particularly in Wales. That is the thing that will drive the growth for us. It's the thing that will make us much more attractive. And increasingly important is the fact that something like that then becomes much more resilient. So things like Brexit or the COVID, if you have that resilience within your ecosystem, then they're a lot better to grow sort of as a recovery after that. Next slide, please. That's the one, thank you. So that exciting ecosystem that we're aiming at, it brings in some really useful things. So it's really good at encouraging and nurturing new ideas. So sort of that pre-startup phase, that sort of ideation element. There's always a lot of risk around that stage for startups and early growth companies. So we want to be able to reduce that risk and accelerate those processes where possible. Another role of this and this sort of really well performing ecosystem is that it attracts investment and attracts new business into the area. So people see that there is that resilience, there is that growth, there is that well planned strategy and long-term vision. So they feel a lot more comfortable to invest their company or their finances into the region. So not only is it looking at new growth, but it's also looking at things that we've already got there. So we have existing elements to that ecosystem. We want to very much protect those and help them to grow as well. So it's sort of like a two-way street, if you like, between those outside that we want to bring in and also protecting those that we already have. And then the final point, but by no means the least of all of these, is that if you have that ecosystem that's working well and you have that longer term vision, then it helps you create the right talent and deliver it when it's needed. So this very much changes that sort of skills pipeline from being on demand and reactive, which sometimes means that you don't have enough people with the right talent when it's needed, into one that's a lot more planned and proactive. So you can actually have a look at your sort of longer term vision, understand what skills are likely needed in the longer term, and then you can actually put some of these mechanisms into gear so they can actually deliver them when you need it. So that gives you a bit of a competitive advantage and also helps bring that resilience to that ecosystem as well. Next slide, please. So the things we need to do, one of them is ignite this collaborative innovation system. And for that, we're sort of move into something which is around make, buy, team steer decision making. So companies and members in it, do they make products and services? Do they buy them from someone else? Do they generate teams to do it? or are they actually steering others within the system to actually undertake that for themselves? So all this comes from that sort of longer term vision that we're looking at. Next slide, please. So this is the key part that we're sort of, one of the ones that we're focusing on for this is around what are the drivers that there exist for innovation and product sort of evolution and development. So you get technology, so advances in technology offer, sorry, that's my 6 minutes.
That's your timer.
It is. So I'll be very rapid in the next slide and a half, sorry. So the sort of drivers that we notice around what needs to drive that innovation system is you either get demands coming from the market side, you get advances in technology which give you opportunities to develop new products and services, or something within the business which is driving that change. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So at the heart of all of that for us is this longer term vision which drives the ecosystem. It drives the skills needs so we can then sort of preempt what is needed. But also this is a thing that allows us to be much more collaborative. It allows us to share knowledge between different organisations, between academia, between big primes and SMEs. By understanding this longer term vision for everybody, you can work out what are those common skills and USPs that you have, but also understanding what are the common challenges and the things that you need to work on together. So that is the thing for us that brings in that efficiency and effectiveness and gives everybody that sort of warm feeling that we're doing the right thing and that it's all going in the right direction. So I'll skip the last slide for time, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Very diligent of you with your timer in the background. Thanks, Gavin. So we're going to go finally, but by no means least, we're going to go to Stuart and talk about FinTech West. Stuart, over to you.
Thank you, and hi everyone. Like some of the others, FinTech West is a young group, represents a very young ecosystem, albeit it's not a small ecosystem. By nature of the stage we're at, we're relatively resource poor. We don't have external investment, but I am hoping to change that in the forthcoming months. So by nature of that, most of the effort, proactive effort certainly has been around Bristol and Bath region, and hence this presentation. Next slide, please. So some of you may well have been aware of the FinTech Ecosystem Report we released earlier in the year. If not, you can find a link to download it on the FinTech West website at fintechwest.co.uk. It's staggering that it continues to attract so much attention, but I think part of that is because we came out of it so well. It's still generating many discussions, which is fantastic. And the research itself has formed the basis for most of our current activities, which we're working around to address the various challenges identified. Next slide, please. Yeah, great. We're actually really proud of this ecosystem. It's built up to quite a considerable strength over a relatively short period of time. We'll basically look very briefly at why this was able to happen, but certainly this ecosystem puts what is population-wise a small region on par with larger conurbations, or indeed ahead of them in many instances. So it's certainly a great start and something we want to continue. Next slide. Some of the highlights from the findings of the research showed that Bristol and Bath had a higher density of fintechs than any other region researched. In fact, you could see from the previous diagram that we look similar to other regions, yet we have as little as a third of the population in some instances. We have a very young age of fintech businesses. Majority are actually startups, early stage businesses that were only founded in recent years. There's actually very few large fintechs, although of course we want to attract more as we expand and the word gets out. So we've got, however, a strong technology sector. We have a strong financial services sector, with over 60,000 people working in financial services or technology, with that sort of fairly evenly split. And we're one of the largest digital clusters within the country as well. So it's clear, I mean, the West punches well above its weight. Before the research, however, it seemed obvious that it was the combination of a large financial services workforce and large technology workforce that were the perfect combination to form the ecosystem, but that wasn't actually the case. Well, at least not the financial services part of it. So perhaps it'd be worth briefly looking at why more closely. So next slide, please. What we found that the fintech ecosystem has almost entirely come from the entrepreneurial nature of the founders working in a highly collaborative, technology-driven region. The financial services sector here has had minimal impact on the foundation of the ecosystem and its early traction. Obviously, we want that to continue, and there's very good signs that, don't want that to continue, and there's very good signs that it will change. Many financial services businesses are now getting more involved in what we're doing. But generally, technology, creativity and innovation permeate the whole of this region, from aerospace, creative digital, robotics, microelectronics, quantum, and so on. And we have a lot of good stats or headlines that we can roll out about being one of the best startups or best places to get investment, and so on and so forth. So we always score high on some of those related factors. We've got a lot of good stories around technology and innovation. And we've seen a good growth, like many regions in the last few years, over around co-working spaces. And we also, unlike many other regions, have Set Squared, which is consistently voted the global #1 business incubator, and that's actually highly impactful within this region. So if we can move on to the next slide. What we're doing now, and I'll briefly cover this in the next minute or so, is looking at areas of collaboration. We've been running some roundtables, bringing together financial services and fintechs to explore how we can interface them to each other and solve those introductions and collaboration type issues. We've been working on diversity. We're one of the best regions in the country, but it's still poor at only 14% of female founders. So again, we've been exploring ways of improving that. Getting universities involved. We've got a lot of work underway with the University of West of England. They've got a FinTech MSc, which we've helped form. And also we're working on projects with the University of Bristol around expanding the ecosystem. Similar things around investment solutions. One thing I definitely want to say is we're expanding, given the nature, we can do a lot more remotely through things like Zoom, in our support of the Southwest, because that is a strong area as well for fintechs and growth companies down there. So I think there's a lot of good stories about the West. There'll be a lot more happening, but that's all I've got time to talk about at the moment.
Good man, Stuart. Thank you so much. And listen, thank you, everybody. I know it's kind of hard to rattle through in sort of 6-7 minutes, but that was awesome. And I hope everybody on the call enjoyed just listening to the wonderful work that's going on around the UK. So we have a few questions that have come in. I'm just going to fire these out to the panelists. So everybody be on your toes. Okay, so we've got one here from James. James, so what barriers are you seeing from young fintech startups innovating from idea through to scale up? So Alex, I'm going to fire that one to you if that's okay.
Sure, thanks, Ken. Look, one of those common challenges we hear from our fintech firms around scaling, apart from access to capital, but I don't think that's unique to the firms here. I think most fintechs need lots of capital to scale. Other than that, it's really forming partnerships with incumbent financial services companies. I think the narrative moved a long time ago from fintechs disrupting banks and disrupting incumbents to now fintechs partnering with incumbents, and they find that particularly challenging, I think, both in the regions, because there are very few regional head offices based outside of the major capitals like London, but also just how does an organisation of 10 people go about partnering with an organisation the size of 50,000 people. So that's the most common challenge that we hear around scaling is the need to partner with incumbent banks.
Fantastic. Okay. So Charlotte, if I may, I'm going to pass this one your direction. Be good to understand how the FinTech National Network is working with other industry verticals, travel tech, retail tech, and maybe you could wrap in the point around InsurTech as well that I know you've come back to in the Q&A.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think FinTech's growing behind just FinTech. So a lot of people sort of say FinTech is separate to RegTech, to InsurTech. But if you think of it as technology and financial services, then obviously it covers a huge range. And I think it's really helpful to have organisations that then focus down onto those sub verticals. But obviously, again, coming back to COVID, we're seeing a huge acceleration of the innovation across every single part of FinTech. The fact if you wear an Apple Watch, is that FinTech? Well, probably, because it feeds into your health data that might eventually feed into your premiums. So what we're seeing now is more what's the role of technology in innovating all parts of financial services and anyone who uses finance, e-commerce, payments, etc. But certainly on the InsurTech question, very interested in working with the InsurTech side as we see them really accelerating their adoption of technology on the back of COVID.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, so there is an anonymous one that's come in to ask if you could give sort of one or two words about your USP, the niche things in your region that stands out, then do it. So what I'm going to challenge each of you with is come up with one word that is the word that stands you out, and I'm going to come to you in just a second to answer the anonymous question. So have a wee think while I dish out the next question. We'll come back to that. So the next question, how does the FinTech National Network members see the main players evolving as open banking moves towards open finance? So Michael, I'm going to direct that to you, given what you talked about in the open finance movement in Scotland.
Sure, thank you, Ken. Well, I think it's first of all important to mention that open banking is not a done thing. So even before moving to open finance, we need to get a lot better at developing new solutions around open banking. What the Center for Open Finance is going to try to do is take open banking to the next level, ensuring that we've got standards around it, but also making sure that it's not just something that new FinTech can use. It's going to be very important that whatever we do in that space is also used by, for example, policymakers, researchers, to make the most out of the data that can be gathered through open banking, then open finance, and then quickly to move towards open life. We're looking at whether combining health data with wealth data is something that could bring good research elements, but also some nice innovation. So that's the things we're going to be focusing on with the University of Edinburgh and the fintechs that are involved in the project as well. We've got some great examples of fintechs such as Origo, looking at the pension dashboard. So having all those guys working together, we will get to open finance at some point, but hopefully then moving to open life.
Great. Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, so I'm going to canter around and give me, please, each one or two words that represents what your USP is. So first of all, we'll let Michael catch his breath, but let's go to Alex, Karen in Northern Ireland. One or two words.
Cybersecurity, RegTech, trading tech.
Nice. Nice. Okay, Julian, the North.
Welcoming. So I think the North's open for for more people to come and work, come and get involved in the FinTech ecosystem.
Love it. Gavin in Wales.
For me, it's a good one. Is digital online comparison.
Nice, like it. Stuart in the West.
Ethical finance and FinTech for good.
Great. And finally, Michael in Scotland.
The weather. Just
Love
joking.
it.
No, connectivity of the ecosystem.
Fantastic. Okay, well, listen, I'm sorry we've had to hustle through, but I'm sure you will all agree it's been wonderful listening to the panelists, and a huge thank you to the panelists for coming on and sharing that insight, and a massive thank you to Charlotte and Innovate Finance for putting this on. So we'll pause there. There were some questions about the slides, so I'll connect with the panelists here and see if we can get a version of the slides that can come out. This is being recorded as well, so I'm sure at some point there will be a recording made available. But thank you everybody for coming on. I know I speak on behalf of all the panelists here. Thank you everyone for coming on. It's been great to canter you through the Great British Isles, and hopefully that's been useful to you. So we'll close there. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris.